Okay, Saqib and Yusuf, I hope that Zana should also be able to join. Alternatively, you can inform him that he should have access to this class recording that would be shared on the Moodle. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So, sequence wise, there are number of units like database design, web development, software engineering, computing research methods, managing computer project, network design, cyber security, innovative computing, and strategic management information systems. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would really be interested if you could send me the transcript, yeah, of your previous study, that which units you have done, so that I would, get an idea that what units you have studied and at what level, I should have, speak to you guys. You understand what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So,
Can I send it through your WhatsApp?
yeah, you can send me through WhatsApp. You can take a picture and whatsoever. It should be helpful for me. Okay,
No problem.
right. So cyber security, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a unit, and we will cover the learning outcome one for this unit. Understand the impact of cyber security threats to organizations. Yeah. So I hope that you must be aware very well with the internet, as well as the security problems in the internet, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So have you ever tried to think about your credentials, the critical data of your phone, of your any of the documents, that whether they are secure or not? You must have
Yes.
confirmed. Yeah. So
Yeah.
today's session is, obviously, uh, we assume that you know what the computer is, what the software is, yeah,
Mm.
in simply in and you know very well about what the software is and what the hardware is, yeah,
Yeah.
and also know that what is the network and what is the internet, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe have you studied the network design unit ever,
Network design.
or networking?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, like they explain that how the computers get connected, and how they form a network, and how a network makes a wide
Yeah.
area network, and then how the internet works. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So based on these concepts, the we are here to discuss about the cyber security or the internet security. So normally, these units could have been taught in a sequence or randomly, but assumption is made that you have some previous knowledge. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So let us start from the directions given into the uh, you know guidelines of the unit. Yeah.
Mm.
So like today is our first session, so you should be aware that we will be following this specification, like this file, like a cyber security from the ATHE, like a unit aims, unit
Yeah.
level, and then learning outcomes and indicative contents. Yeah, I hope you know very well that what this document explains. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the contents, indicative contents to be discussed today are cyber security risks, authentication, staff, software and hardware vulnerabilities, then network vulnerabilities, then impact of cybersecurity, and these topics would be discussed, as a key points. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
and obviously after discussing this, you should be able to say, like, analyze the current cybersecurity risk to organizations, critically assess the vulnerability of computer network security in a chosen organization, evaluate the impact of cybersecurity on a chosen organization. So you should be able to answer these questions in any scenario after studying this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So start with authentication. Yeah. Do you know anything, something about the authentication?
The authentication.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Can you explain?
Actually, I think it's the process whereby you get to verify, or how do I put it? Yeah, I think it's like a verification process.
Are you reading from the slide or reading from your mind?
No, I'm reading from my mind.
Okay, good. And yeah, to verify. And Yusuf, do you want to say something about the authentication?
Yusuf. Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Yusuf. Do you want to say
Hello.
something about the authentication?
Hello.
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Do you want to say something about the authentication?
Sorry, what did you say?
Do you know anything about the authentication?
Anything about what?
Are you looking at the screen now?
Hello? Yeah,
Hello?
I do.
Yeah, then we are talking about authentication.
Okay, authentication.
Yeah.
So I think we could call it a process of verification, right?
Yeah. Okay. So keep an eye on the slide that what we are talking, and do try to participate. Yeah, it's good that you will be actively, like Sabik is making a lead role in your group, but I would really appreciate that you should also speak a lot as well. Yeah.
All right, sir.
It's good for you and good for a good good communication and good
Yes.
group study. Yeah. Okay. So okay, Sapik.
Yeah.
So let us start. Authentication is basically you authorize someone to access anything. Yeah. For example, if you are authorized to enter your new home, yeah, how do you enter your new home? You use your key, yeah, and you use your, let's say, for example, code in order to enter your space, yeah. So in computing, authentication is any process by which a system verifies the identity of a user who wishes to access it, yeah. So whosoever is intending to enter into the system is basically a granted permission which is given to the user, and obviously the permission is also configured that who can enter. For example, if the subject is eligible to enter into the computer, then being an administrator, yeah, the name of the subject should have been included as well, so that the name of the subject as well as the password generated for the subject should have been matched. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, looking at this authentication topic, the next topic is risk-based authentication. Yeah. So the risk-based authentication, sometimes called adaptive authentication, is an emerging identity and access technology. So what happens, let me tell you the scenario. Even the subject is, allowed to use his password and username, for example, yeah, and subject wants to try to transfer his money from his bank account, for example, to, Yusuf's bank account, yeah.
Yeah.
There would be a scenario that probably, Sabik is not logged in from his own computer, and probably, he is sitting at Yusuf's house, yeah, and the computer and the server identified that this identification, this device is not been used ever by Sabik, or not frequently used by Sabik, and the money is going to be transferred from his account to Yusuf, yeah.
Yes.
Then certain triggers are activated, yeah. So certain triggers are activated. How? So that is basically the authentication, but the system identifies that it's a kind of risk-based authentication. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So it uses a range of factors from the user, their behavior, devices they are using, and other variables to determine whether this user is potentially dangerous or he is a genuine user. So when a person attempts to access an application, database, or any other source, secure resource, risk-based authentication system will evaluate their credentials. Make sense? Yeah. So if the user does not meet certain standards, they will be prompted to submit additional verification such as an SMS code, biometric factors, or security question answer. Any number of these may be required depending on the administrator settings and user's threat level. So I believe you must have observed these things before. Have you? Have you got an experience of, extra security being asked from you in ever? Okay, so that's a question, and I think if the connection is dropped, then I continue to the slide. The recording is being done, and you can always, repeat this recording, and maybe you got my question or not, but let me proceed. Yeah. So that's basically the risk-based authentication that you face, and automatically triggered on the basis of the usage, how it is identified by the system. Now the risk-based authentication examples are, for example, I gave you the bank example, and if the Sabik tried to send money to Yusuf, and it's not sure that whether he's Sabik or Yusuf is trying to access his account, then probably at the time of the transaction, the bank can ask few other security questions, for example, the memorable password and many other things which normally they are not, known to anyone else. Yeah, are you able to listen?
Yes.
Okay. So I think you were dropped for a minute, but I'm sorry, if you are dropped, then I would continue, and so that in case if your connection is last for longer 5-10 minutes, so it would be not good, as I explained earlier. Is that okay? So I should continue practice. Yeah, because you can always go through the PowerPoint slides that are uploaded on the Moodle, as well as the session recording would also be available. Yeah. Okay, good. Now if you want to be safe in an organization regarding the cyber security risks, yeah, then you need to educate your staff. Yeah. So how you would be educating your staff? It is important for organizations to include the cyber security training on a regular basis, explaining the potential impact a cyber incident may have on your operations. Yeah, because within an organization, you are using the customer data, you are using the company's data. Yeah, you have financial records, you have very much important data related with your business. Then if your staff is using that data, using the IT, using the computers, then it is most important to include a kind of regular training to your staff that how you may use these computing devices, and you educate them. If you will not do that, then they would be at a higher risk. Yeah. So employees need to know their obligations, that how they need to use the data and how they need to use the systems. So it shouldn't be the case that an employee may want to take the office computer to home for their kids for weekend. Would it be good enough?
Yeah.
Would you allow someone to take the computer for their kids over the weekend if you are a boss in a company?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it's not enough to require an annual review and signing off, and I have read and understood company IT policies statements. Most of the time, we accept blindly the terms and conditions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be the annually that you review what are the terms and conditions within the company, but top managers are often the target. So one make sure that the review and educating the staff shouldn't be annually, but it should be regularly. Maybe a kind of short meeting every week or monthly, but must be regular. Yeah. Top managers are often the target of cyber criminals because of their higher level of access to critical corporate and customer data. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, like if there is a company and there are 10 computers, and for example 9 computers are used by the normal staff operators and one computer is used by the manager who has got all the records of company financial details, any savings, loss, whatsoever. So the criminals, the hackers, will not be trying to access the normal computers, but they would be targeting the top manager computers. And
Yeah.
So this increased access has a much bigger damage financial payoff for the hackers. Yeah. So if any manager's computer is hacked, then that's a big loss. And if any normal computer is hacked or affected, then obviously it will not be that much cost. But the top level managers, computers are, they have to pay off. Yeah. So IT staff are also more vulnerable given their administrative access to the network. So for example, if you think that you are appointed in a firm to be the IT administrator, yeah, so don't even trust on your manager. For example, yeah, for example, you are the IT administrator, and there is a top level manager on you. For example, yeah, and within the rules and regulations, you have to protect the employees of the company as well as your privileges and your role as well. And for example, the role you created for the manager, for example, the manager can see each and everything from the his role into any of the organization, for example, but the manager may not have the opportunity to create a new account, for example, yeah,
Yeah.
into the system, then you should not give the privileges to the manager account so that the manager can create any account on his own, because it would be your responsibility to create the particular roles. So you being an IT administrator, you would be more vulnerable in the eyes of hackers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So you have to be very much careful about it as well. Now, what are the types of the vulnerabilities? So vulnerabilities can incur into the hardware as well as software. Make sense?
Yeah.
How?
Um.
Okay. Basically, it's not the case that, for example, the software you are using, yeah, and somebody could, get the access, for example, to the software and can read from the software the whatever the data is stored into the software. Yeah, for example, in the record, in a file, yeah, in a picture, yeah, stored on the computer. That's the one possibility that, for example, a hacker can access your software. Yeah, there is another possibility that a hacker can directly enter and get access on your computer hard disk, yeah, the access on the memory of the computer, because what happens, the computer programs, they run on the hardware. It means whatever the data that you see on the monitor, basically it is displayed, and the content is also the same content is available on the memory of the computer. You understand this?
Mm. Can you come again, please?
Yeah. Like, if you are looking at the screen, yeah, for example, A is written. For example, this cybersecurity is written in front of your screen, right?
Yeah.
Then you can read it. But do you know that where that is written as well? That is also written into the hardware of the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the instructions go to the hardware of the computer, and the hardware has capability to show on your screen. For example, it has a capability to, if you can attach this, for example, screen using another monitor as well, another display screen. Can you attach like any type of screen to your computer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it means the things that you see is basically coming from the hardware. Make sense?
Yes.
So yeah, so it's not the case that if this cybersecurity word is, for example, cybersecurity risk is shown into the, let's say, Microsoft Word now, yeah, and for example, this is being hacked, but no, if the hacker is trying to access your hardware, yeah, then it's also called the hardware vulnerability.
Yes.
Okay, you got it now.
Yeah, I do.
So in the same slide, here is a link. You can browse this. Obviously, there are lots of the vulnerabilities available, incurring day by day. So, for example, let me give you a quick listing, and then you can read it later on. Like hardware vulnerability includes the BIOS, the basic input. Do you know what is the BIOS?
The BIOS?
Yeah.
No.
No. Basically, the I'm sorry to say that these things are little bit being covered into the normal basic computing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if those things, they would have not been included into your previous, modules, then I would be explaining those, for you. And obviously, I would also appreciate if you could send me the list of your, previous modules, and then I would, be explaining accordingly. But let me quickly go through these. The hardware, like I said, that what problems can be the vulnerabilities be arise because of the hardware, like the BIOS is basically you set up your computer by pressing F2,
Yes.
when you set up the boot sequence and the date and time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's BIOS basically.
All right.
Yeah. So basic
Yeah.
input output system. So sometimes when the computers get older and they are required to update the BIOS, if you don't update the BIOS, then there can be problems with the security and other problems. So hardware problem can occur and vulnerability can occur because of the BIOS. Yeah. Then there are certain PBA, that's a pre-boot authentication, kind of within the BIOS. Old routers, the old equipment device, sometimes you face the problems that they are slow, or breaking the internet connection because they have some loopholes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes the hard drives you are using, they are not encrypting. Yeah. Do you know what the encryption is?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are for example, if you store the data into your hard drive, into your portable hard drive, and it's not encrypted, then you are vulnerable according to the hardware. Make
Yes.
sense? Yeah.
Yes.
So these are the types of the hardware, the vulnerabilities that can occur. Then
Yeah.
the software vulnerabilities are, let's say, unpatched, out of date operating system. Sometimes what happens, you get messages that your operating system is not, licensed. You activate your operating system and get the updates. Have you ever, seen these things?
Sorry?
Have you ever noticed that your Windows is, not activated and you activate it, otherwise it's not safe, and, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So when the software is not up to date, then you are at risk because you are not getting up to date security features. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes the softwares are out of date, then you don't get the proper security and other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then legacy custom applications, for example, the older applications, they were built like 10 years ago, may not be suitable to run on Windows 10. You might have got this experience, that, oh, the application is older, doesn't work on the Windows 10. Have you ever noticed?
Yes.
Yeah. So legacy custom applications, when you really try to run on the Windows 10, then they have a loopholes and the softwares would be vulnerable and they are at the risk. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unpaged browsers, yeah. And sometimes what happens, you try to access the Internet Explorer and you get a notification that you try to update the browser. Have you ever noticed this?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So if the browser is not up to date, then there's a possibility that your contents could be easily compromised. Contents in a way that if the browser is not able to detect any unsafe website, for example, a server which has got a virus and the browser is not able to identify, then obviously you would be at risk, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Out of date plugins. Normally, you use lots of plugins into the browser and different applications. If they are not up to date, then obviously you get the messages from your computer from antiviruses that you update it. Otherwise, you are at security risk, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's about the cybersecurity risk involving hardware and software vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, vulnerability analysis is basically the assessment, is the process that defines, identifies, and classifies the security holes in a computer, network, or communication infrastructure. So there are certain softwares that you can use, that whether the particular hardware, software, network is vulnerable or not. Like, they try to access the software, they try to access the hardware, and these softwares can tell you that whether it is good or not. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So vulnerability analysis contains the certain steps, like you define and classify the network or system resource, that which system or resource in a sense that whether if it is a computer, it's a resource. If it is a hard drive, it's a resource. If it is a the printer, it's a resource. If, for example, if the CCTV is connected with the computer, it's a resource. If it is a webcam connected with the computer, it's a resource. You identify which resource you want to analyze, then assigning relative levels of importance to the resource.
Yeah.
For example, what is the importance of the webcam? The webcam should only be used when the particular software and you allowed to access it. It shouldn't be the case that you are sitting and webcam is being accessed by any application without your notification. Make sense?
Yes.
Identify potential threats to each resource. For example, you should be able to know that what is important in my computer, whether the Windows is important, whether the microphone is important, or whether particular directory where you have stored your files, which is important and which is most risky. For example, if you saved your data into Word file, your passwords, then can someone read your Microsoft Access Word file?
No.
They can read it, but unless you you apply the password on the Microsoft Word file. Have you ever tried to apply the password on your Microsoft Word file?
No, I haven't.
Do you know you can apply the password on your Microsoft Word file?
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes you need to store the most important, data like username, passwords, into your computer, and you are not sure that whether your computer is secure from, for example, the hackers or maybe someone who uses your computer, but they can read your data. So you can always use the passwords on the files as well.
Yeah.
Then develop a strategy to deal with the most serious potential problems. So you should have a strategy. For example, if you are sharing your computer with someone and you must need to grant the access to Yusuf, for example, but if you have username and passwords of your Facebook, maybe you have very secret chats, and so that Yusuf cannot have a look on it, you can store passwords into a Word file, that nobody would be able to. A strategy, Then defining and implementing ways to minimize the consequences if an attack occurs, So you should be very much, clear. For example, if your bank username and password is hacked, yeah, so you should be able to
Yeah.
contact your bank, yeah, and the bank should able to see that if, for example, someone tried to access to the bank, it should be fine. But obviously, no one can transfer the money that much quickly from your account to anyone else's account, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, because if the amount would be transferred to someone, then it would be easily identifiable that to whom the money is going to. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. So now the
Yeah.
network, yeah, next is the network exposure. An exposure is a state in a computing system or set of system which is not a universal vulnerability but either allows an attacker to conduct information gathering activities or to hide activities. So basically the network exposure is available to the hackers. It's not the only case every time that your software or hardware is vulnerable, like it could be damaged or it could be have any problem, but still the your information could be stolen. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's basically the exposure. So your network vulnerability is a main issue. For example, if you have a kind of uh, router in your house, okay, and
Yeah.
you have four PCs connected with the wire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And someone, in your neighbor is asking you to give a connection of wire to his computer next to your house. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
know him, then you would grant him, you will, connect his cable to your router as well. But if you
Yeah.
don't know, then would you allow him to access your internet via cable?
No. No. No.
Why you will not, allow?
Hello.
Yeah. Why you would not allow anyone to connect with your network? What's the reason?
Because if you don't know the person, then you might be at risk.
Yeah. So what happens? Because your network is sometime, the at exposure. So your network is at exposure sometime when you use, for example, the secure websites. For example, you use your bank, then use the HTTPS protocol. Yeah. So HTTPS protocol is basically when you create a connection between two computers, like your computer and the server of the bank. Yeah, then any of the password or data which travels in between is secure, nobody can listen. However, over the network, yeah, any other data that you use, you browse any other websites, they are easily readable, that for example which websites you are using. So it comes onto the network vulnerability, that even if nobody can you know harm your data, but your data is exposed. So be careful about the network boundary, and be aware that your network is exposed. So vulnerability scanning, like previously explained, that certain tools can be used. So basically it is the inspection of the potential points of exploit on a computer network to identify security holes. Vulnerability scans detect and classify system weakness in computers, networks, and communication equipment, and predicts the effectiveness of countermeasures. So basically, it is an action taken to work against a danger or threat. Yeah. So using certain tools, you can scan the vulnerability into the network. Then vulnerability verification and reporting. Regular scheduled network vulnerability scanning can help an organization identify weakness in their network security before the bad guys can mount an attack. Yeah. So after the next network exposure, as I explained, that your network is always exposed, so you try to make it secure. And then vulnerability scanning is you scan and inspect that what are the potential points that could be affected, yeah, in a computer network. Where can be the security holes, yeah. So that scanning, like I explained the tool in earlier slides, for example, OpenVS, that would allow you to scan and monitor the vulnerabilities, yeah.
Yeah.
So verification and reporting. So you should verify and report about the all vulnerabilities, yeah, regularly, because
Yeah.
it will help an organization identify weaknesses in their network security before the bad guys can mount an attack. Yeah, so it is most important you keep on verifying and reporting, because with the passage of time, for example, if your antivirus within an organization is working well today, and if you don't update it, then maybe tomorrow a new virus definition could come, and they can harm your computer. So your everything, your security measures should have been done up to date. Yeah. So basically, the goal of running a vulnerability scanner or conducting an external vulnerability assessment is to identify devices on your network that are open to known vulnerabilities without actually compromising your systems. Yeah. So it's not only the case that you yourself internally try to scan, but externally you can get it assessed. Yeah, like different websites, they say, they claim, they send you sometime email, or your website is, for example, your website or your computer is at scan, these are the loopholes, you get this protection. Have you ever received this notice?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the case. And sometimes what happens, there are some seminars, there are certain workshops, the world hackers are invited, yeah, to break anything, to hack something, to expose any vulnerability. What they do, they, for example, sometimes they say, you are here and we are going to hack your phone now, and we can tell you that what you have in your mobile. Yeah, have you ever heard about this?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So basically, that they are not doing anything wrong, yeah, but they are making aware to the companies that how their devices are vulnerable and how they need to be protected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Conduct vulnerability scans, yeah. So perform an in-depth scan of IP address provided and potential user credentials scans to identify security weaknesses and vulnerabilities. So obviously, most of the time, it is identified that who is using the particular resource or who is trying to access it. For example, if he is the Sabik, then it's fine. From which IP address he is accessing. For example, suddenly after an hour, the Sabik is trying to access from the USA IP address. Yeah. Then it would be a kind of, an alert. So that kind of vulnerability scans should have been done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So vulnerability research and verification says that verify all the vulnerabilities discovered, identify false positives. So false positive is basically sometimes you know that you are secure, but that's not true, and there can be some loopholes. So you try any possibility, determine the potential impact of exploited vulnerabilities, prioritize the remediation efforts, generate specific recommendations for the remediations. Yeah. So you should have some remedy that what would you do if something would happen. Probably you should have some backup plans if anything goes wrong. If any virus comes into your computer, then you should have some backup data, then about your records and everything, then you should be able to reverse the records to the actual unaffected data. Yeah. Then network security concepts. So network devices such as routers, firewalls, gateways, switches, hubs, and so forth create the infrastructure of the local area networks and internet on the global scale. Securing such devices is fundamental to protecting the environment and outgoing income communications. You also have to be aware of security risks and control available in public switch networks, PSTN infrastructure, because PSTN that are often used for the computer communications. Yeah. So it's not only the case. You know what is the PSTN?
A PSTN?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it before.
Yeah. Basically, these are the telephone lines which are connected with your router to get the internet. Yeah. So that's about the network security. Yeah. So the question arises that how you can make a secure network. So you should have a firewall. A firewall is a hardware device or software application installed on the broader line of the secure networks to examine and control incoming and outgoing. So most of the time there are the firewalls in the Windows. They really monitor and control that how the data should come into the computer, how the data should leave the computer in a secure way, in a recognized way. For example, the internet we try to connect is using the address of the internet and port, for example 8080. These are the ports where you receive the data. And what happens, a port is a hardware device, is a place where the data can enter or leave into your system. Yeah. And the firewalls make a control and monitoring of these things, that the data, the incoming request, is it coming from the secure channel or not. So network security concepts advises you to adopt these approaches. So one of them is a firewall, another is packet filtering firewall. So the packet filtering firewall is basically the architecture involves checking the network traffic for the source and the destination addresses. Yeah. So in normal firewall, you try to make yourself secure that the any incoming or outgoing data should have a particular path and should be controlled and examined. The incoming and outgoing traffic should be examined. Yeah. And maybe the packet filtering firewall is that you need to be able to identify that who is the sender of the data. For example, you don't need to look at my data. If I am sending you some data, you don't need to look at my data. But if you are able to know that it's me and I'm sending you some data from the UK, and you know that my UK location and the IP is known to you, then you can trust it. that okay, this data is coming from that particular location, so it should be secure. So that's another way of packet filtering firewall. However, in the firewall itself, you really monitor that what the data is coming and whether it is safe or not. So that's another option. And then you try to have another security concept, circuit level gateway. Circuit level architecture involves monitoring TCP/IP session requests between trusted host on the LAN and non-trusted host on the internet. So then you basically get to know that in which protocol the data is coming. Like, when you are using the network, when you are connected with the internet, you are using the kind of protocol rule. Certain rule is applied, like a transmission control protocol, internet protocol. Using that protocol, you send and receive the data. So the next level is that if you are using the protocol, that particular protocol, and the protocol is not violated, the data is coming through that particular protocol, then should be fine. Sometimes like TCP/IP protocol is called lightweight, and you create the stateless connections. And when you create other type of connections, the states, and they are heavyweight protocols, and you need to get connected, and you have more parameters. So the way the data is traveling, you can monitor as well. Then application level gateway is known as proxy, and is function on the highest level of the OSI model. So basically, if you really want to make sure that any data which is being received or sent is secure, you create a kind of proxy. Proxy is a kind of small utility or program that would make sure that anything being sent from your point of location to another point of location, only the proxy and another proxy can read and interpret. That's another way of securing the network. Another is the stateful inspection, also known as the dynamic packet filtering, is a firewall technology that monitors the state of the active connections and uses this information to determine which network packets to allow through the firewall. So basically what happens, the nature of the packets, the nature of the data also identifies that whether the particular incoming or outgoing traffic data is secure and is being requested for the safe purpose or not. Then the security threats. The security threats have some classification. That's basically the malware is a short form for malicious software. So the malicious software is basically the variety of form of hostile, aggressive, intrusive, interfering, or annoying software or program code. So normally they are the viruses, worms, Trojan horse, dishonest spyware, and malicious rootkits. So what they are, basically the computer virus is a type of malicious software. When executed, replicates itself by modifying other computer programs and inserting its own code. So you must have heard about these things like virus, Trojan horse, spyware, these things. So let us see what they are in actually. So virus itself is a malicious software that executes and replicates by itself and modifies computer programs by inserting their own code. You must have seen that your files get corrupted, and they are not corrupted, as well as certain extra codes are inserted into your program, your files, in your Word file. That's a virus. A computer virus can spread from one infected computer to another computer. For example, if you have virus in your USB drive, then it would be wherever you would use it, it would be spread. When this replication succeeds, the affected areas are then said to be infected with the computer virus. Virus could corrupt, steal, or delete data on your computer, even erasing everything on your hard drive. Also, virus can damage your RAM as well. A virus could also use other programs like email programs to spread itself to other computers. Network security threat, the computer worm. A worm is a software program that can copy itself from one computer to another without human interaction. Yeah. So if it is a type of malware, which is a worm, then you don't need to use any means to travel. It will automatically travel from one computer to another, obviously using network. So worms can replicate in great volume and with great speed. For example, worm can send copies of itself to every contact in your email address book and then send itself to all the contacts in your contact address book. Yeah. A Trojan horse. Users can infect their computer with Trojan horse software simply by downloading an application they thought was legitimate but was in fact malicious. Once inside your computer, Trojan horse can do anything from record your password by logging keystrokes known as keystroke logger to hijacking your webcam to watch and record your every move. So Trojan horse basically, are hosted into exe files. Yeah, in softwares, you download any software, you never know that whether the software is safe or not. Sometimes antiviruses, warn you, and sometimes, they are not being warned. So in addition to the normal functionality of the software they provide, they can do anything with your computer and you will not know. So malicious spyware is the next, is basically used to describe as a Trojan application that was created by criminals to spy on their victims. So spyware, they spy, for example, probably they may not harm your computer, they may not harm your software, they may not harm you at all, but they use a kind of keylogger software that records the victim's every keystroke. For example, your computer is secure. Yeah, they cannot steal anything from your computer, but they can listen to your passwords. Yeah, for example, they can listen to your passwords of the email address users. Nowadays, uh, you receive many emails, or your friends get the email address from you. Yeah, like emails from your email, and probably they are being marketed. Yeah, that the record of information is periodically sent back to the originating cyber criminal over the internet. What happens that if any spyware is residing, they would try to steal your password. They won't harm you in direct way, but indirectly they would try to get your habits. They would be sending you something related where you could be cheated. Yeah, they would try to cheat you indirectly. They would know your personal things, and they would for example, they would be giving you an offer and they would blackmail you that, oh, you have done this, and we know about you, and something like that. So in this way they work. The malicious, the spywares, they do a kind of spying job. So the security attacks, now those were a kind of you know risks, the security threats which you could face, and the known security attacks are listed here. For example, denial of service, the phishing and spear phishing attacks, drive-by attack, password attack, SQL injection attack, cross-site scripting, and eavesdropping attack, birthday attack, malware attack, man-in-the-middle attack. So obviously they have some mechanism of attack, but let me explain to you two of them. So you might have heard that a website becomes unavailable for the users, even the server of the website, which is being hosted by a company. It is secure, everything is fine, but you noticed that you cannot, access particular website. So the big loss or harm to the that situation is basically to the owner of the website. For example, if you launched a website which is running very well, yeah, and for example Yusuf is not happy that his website or your website, Sabik's website should run well, then he would try to make, bunches of requests, hundreds and thousands of requests on the Sabik's website, and what would happen eventually, his website would disappear and won't be responding at all, and it would look like that, the website is not available. However, the number of requests and, the attacks on the website is deliberate, which makes the situation is called the denial of the service. Yeah, so denial of the service is the easiest way to attack on someone's website, yeah, by making thousands of requests, because there is a limit in any server to serve the number of, users on a browser. For example, if you have hosted your website on a shared server, then your website should be able to respond to 100 users in a normal speed. But if you would be bombarding with the denial of service attack, let's say your software robot is trying to access the particular website by by fooling and fake users of, like, let's say 10,000 users, then obviously the website would become unavailable. Yeah, and so that's the kind of the denial of service attack, and it's basically the mechanism it works. Then phishing and spear phishing attacks, like you sometimes receive an email that your PayPal password or the bank account has been hacked, your Apple ID has been hacked. You click on this link and you reset your password immediately. Yeah, so try to fish kind of phishing. Did if you did it by mistake, you entered the username and password, then you would not notice that the website would look like a genuine website, but the URL of the website would be a phishing website. Yeah, so you need to be aware of every type of attack, that how that affect and that attack happens, and what are the precautions to get secured from these kind of attacks. So I explained two of them, and you can have a look on the rest of type of attacks, and maybe there could be more number of attacks existing on the internet, because day by day the new attacks are done, so that becomes the history. Yeah, so we discussed like security attacks, the type of the network security threats, like malicious spyware, the Trojan horse, the computer worm, and virus. I explained all these. I am not sure that whether you were able to listen or not, but I explained these, and they are recorded as well. And the security concepts, how you can make your network secure, introducing the stateful inspection firewall, application level gateway, circuit level gateway, normal firewall, the packet filtering firewall, and certain concepts were discussed. The vulnerability scans were discussed, the verification and reporting, the kind of software your network is exposed. You need to analyze the vulnerability using certain softwares, and your hardware as well as software is vulnerable. You educate your staff, and authentication we discussed. What is the authentication and the risk-based authentication triggers when you really the system identifies that the intended user may not be the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you get all these, and do you have any question before I stop the recording?
Actually, I was able to see everything, but there are some parts that I couldn't listen.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, that I explained earlier that there can be the possibility that your connection might be lost, for a 5 minutes or, 10 minutes. And even,
Yeah.
we have spent another extra, 12 minutes, but I could hardly, complete, with a sequence and flow. And if I would have, stopped, then probably we need, normally 2 hours for one session to be completed.
Yeah. So how do we access the recordings?
Yeah, that's fine. Let me stop the recording now. Yeah.